Welcome. Welcome Commissioner Baker to this morning's coffee session. My name is Jennifer Hux Conright. I am the Association Executive with the Yakima Association of Realtors, and on behalf of Yakima Association Realtors and the Central Washington Homebuilders Association and the Yakima County Farm Bureau, we welcome Commissioner Baker and welcome everybody to the webinar today. So our first issue is we want to know more about your thoughts on the homelessness issue in Yakima and Camp Hope and how that can work together with the proposed new facility that's coming into Yakima, and how you would see those two working together and how that you see that affecting the real estate industry and the home builders industry.
Okay, well, and I wasn't quite sure exactly where you wanted to go with this, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the whole thing and my perspective just in general on the homeless.
Definitely.
So it's interesting because I started out last year, of course, studying this issue in depth, and I'm a business owner in Yakima. I think a lot of people know that I own the grocery outlet in Yakima. So I have actually been intimately familiar with the homeless issue as a business owner, and have had issues in my business and over the years have been including, having people in my parking lot, and our store almost was burned at one point from fires in a vacant field next to us. So my perspective from the beginning was, boy, this is a serious problem. We got to do something about it for the business community. And so I started studying this issue quite a bit last year and learned a whole lot about it. I think that it's important that everyone understand that locally here, there is a lot of money being spent on this issue, but that money all comes from the state, and it's designated very, very tightly on what the state has decided they want the different things to be spent on. So there's very little flexibility or control for the commissioners to make decisions on how we think would be the best use of funds. So, I was surprised when I saw the allocations of funds, and when I went through the process and learned about it, it's really has more to do with the state. And so I've actually spoken to legislators about that. And I said, we really need a little more flexibility and local control here so that we can make decisions that make more sense for our community here. And Representative Mossberger and I did some outreach and went with, UGM, the Union Gospel Mission, and Camp Hope out on outreach missions. And we learned about the programs, and it was very eye-opening. And I think she's a partner who wants to help with that reform, lead on that, and try to help us get some more local control. Camp Hope has been, we have to go back in time and remember where we were with Camp Hope. I think there were a few years ago when we had tents all over across the street from the police station downtown, and we had a lot of problems before that was put together. And that solution out there may not be perfect, but it has really made a big impact on our town. We would have 80 to 100 more people, who knows where they would be, but they would not be in a place where they're safe all day long, because that place is not like Union Gospel Mission, which serves people in the evening and then they stay overnight. Camp Hope is kind of it's a camp. So they stay there all the time, and they don't, wander, and they get all of their meals there, and they have programs there that take them back to jobs. Hopefully that's the goal. And they've been partnering with the Greenway to clean up, and they've done a lot of, through COVID, they didn't have a single case of COVID out there. So that was amazing. But they also did a lot of work shuttling people to and from Memorial Hospital. They take care of seniors. They did medication. They did a lot of outreach in the community through COVID. And COVID in general during that time was an incredible challenge. And I just could mention that really briefly too. I guess we made efforts immediately when COVID hit to make sure that all of our homeless providers had all of the resources that they needed. So that means, we went out and got tents and made sure that the Union Gospel Mission and Camp Hope and anybody else, Rod's House, whoever in the community needed to have hand sanitizer and tents so they could be socially distancing. And we really were nimble about that and got a lot of, praise from the local providers that we were trying to keep people safe and from being out in the streets of Yakima and having problems with COVID. So, and as far as the partnership out there, the Greenway was not thrilled at first, but they've become partners with Camp Hope quite a bit and help. They actually work together to clean up some encampments down by the river. So I see it as a good thing for the community. I don't love tax dollars being spent on this. I'm a conservative Republican. I don't love that, but it is being done by the state. And so if we're going to do it, we're going to do it responsibly here. So first thing that I did is work with our Human Services Department and make sure that all of our programs have data, they have outcomes, we're counting, we're making sure that we're moving people through the system. And then I think the other project that we're talking about is the potential for the jail conversion project, which I went to the legislature last session and I was told there would be no chance for me to get any funding for that. But I did get a little bit of funding to go ahead and pre-design the facility. It would not be another low barrier shelter. My vision of that is to be more like what people might remember if they saw Seattle is Dying. It's more of a break the cycle facility. It's more of a place where you can get dual diagnosis treatment, detox, trying to get people back and transitioning into, being a taxpayer. That's the goal, is to get people in and get people out.
Right. Great. Thank you so much for that. Now we're going to segue into the lawsuit that is happening right now in the county and about the redistricting issue that started in the city and now is going into the county. And we wanted to know your response on that and your opinion.
Well, this is a really tough one. And I've been asked this a few times, and I've been in business a very long time, and I've trusted my attorney if I've ever needed one, which I haven't needed one very often. But when I do, they give me advice and I listen to it, which is a wise thing. And any business people are out there probably know that is a wise thing to do. My attorney, who is Joe Bruzik, so everybody knows Joe, has said, I cannot comment. That is a lawsuit that I am named in.
Okay.
So it's something I can't really comment about the specifics on. I do, keep in mind with lawsuits, they are being handled by lawyers. So it is being handled by the prosecutor's office, and he's got experts in whatever he's doing, but commissioners are not actively commenting.
Okay. Great, thank you. So now we'll segue into the planning and land use issue. As you know, historically, it's not been very easy to work with the planning department. And now with the new planning head, Lisa, she's wanting to do more to get more business into Yakima. So how would you what would you do to change the culture in the planning department, and how would you work with her to get more business to Yakima, especially with home building and development?
Okay. Yeah, there's a whole lot there. So that was when I got to the position, that was going to be my number one goal this year. And gosh, COVID happened. But before that, I'd already had sat down and talked about the online permitting and planning systems, and we were able to get that going. And I think that is something that will help. I know that right now we've got, I think 9, I think it is, types of permits that are available. We're adding 4 to 5 per month. You can do the payment portion will be available, I think, in the beginning of November. All of those things are just intended to help it be, so that it's easier for the builders, so they don't have to come down and sit in the 4th floor anymore. And I know I say 4th floor because everybody probably on this call knows what that means. It used to be a place that you'd hang out for a long time, and we're trying to make that the case anymore. The planning department also has new leadership. Lisa Freund is the public services director, but we have a new planning department head, Tommy Carroll, who's been there a long time. And we had on the hiring committee, when we replaced our former head of planning, Bill Horton, who is a local person who a lot of you will recognize has helped people through a challenging planning with the county. And so having him on that hiring committee helped us make sure that we picked someone who would be friendly to development and to helping people get through the red tape. Now, that hasn't been in place that long. And of course, you know, for me, my goal is, I'm a customer service person. So I've had a business with a culture where in my store, you have 30 seconds from the time your name is called at the cash register to get to the customer and help them. You know, it's something that I have a sense of urgency on this, and it's something that I have, been talking about for my entire career. You don't overpromise and underdeliver. It's just, you just do that, right? So we are working on this, and I think that our leadership understands. I've got also the background with, using secret shoppers and people who, report back to me on how things are going. And so I would encourage everybody on this call to let me know if you're having any issues, because of course we want to fix them. Another thing that I think is kind of my philosophy, and that is I like to be among the people who are doing the work. And so right now the commissioner's office is on the 2nd floor and the planning is on the 4th floor. And I really would like to be closer to all of that. So I've asked them to make room for me, and so that I can be up on the 4th floor at least part of the time and listen and learn and be active in the customer service side of what's going on up there. Excuse me. As far as development goes, we've had some amazing projects. I'm losing my voice for some reason. One of those being the East-West corridor. So we also have out there, there's, I want to say there's hundreds of acres that will be developable for home builders and for apartments. As land comes out of the flood control, the floodplain through the gap to gap there's been a whole lot of stuff that was not buildable, and that will be coming out of the floodplain over the next few years here. That is just going to be fertile ground for all kinds of development. And that is one of the things I'll be focused on, is how to make that happen. And then at the same time, make sure that we're customer friendly, that it's easy to do, that you can do it online, that we're making it so that, builders can just walk through the process easily. And, I think that everyone should know too, that, from the beginning, I've been standing up for construction. I don't know if the builders are aware of that, but, when the stay-at-home order happened in this state, I can't remember the date, but it was, mid-March, maybe the 21st or so. But the 26th of March, I was the first commissioner in the state of Washington to write a letter to Governor Inslee and ask to open construction. A lot of people tagged on to that, but I was the first one to do it, and the first one to stand up on a lot of things in this state. And I have gone to bat for the builders from the beginning, trying to untie red tape and make it easy for them. So I think we need to have a lot more housing. We have a 1% vacancy rate, I'm understanding. And so, boy, do I really want them to get to work. Everybody wants Yakima to grow, Yakima County. So.
Thank you. Thank you for all that you've done for the industry. And I've also forgotten to tell the viewers that if you have a question for Commissioner Baker, please drop it in the Q&A down on your taskbar down on the bottom, or in the chat feature. And we will ask Commissioner Baker that question. So thank you for that response. And now we're going to talk about the well water utility and what your opinion is on that, because that is something very pertinent to our industry. So
yes, yeah, and that was another thing that I started talking about right away in January when I got on the job, because I wanted to understand why we were doing this, and I am a property rights person, so I didn't really appreciate the program, and understand why it was happening. So I spent a lot of time studying it. To me, there's 3 parts to the system, and I can kind of go through my thoughts on those 3 things. The first one is something that we keep running into right now, which is the grandfathering of wells that should have been happening from January 2018 and prior, all those wells. Well, the confusion that's been happening is if somebody builds a bathroom or adds a kitchen or, does something to an existing facility and they had a well, is that a change of use? And there's a confusion with the state, I think. So we're in the situation where I know I've talked to Senator Honeyford about this, and the legislature needs to clarify this so that we have a true grandfather date and we don't have to fuss with people and getting wrapped up in this program when really, they've had a well. So I think the intent may have been to have the well be grandfathered. That is not what's apparently in the code. So I want to work on that part, getting that fixed this session if I possibly can. The second part of it is the utility. And the utility itself was intended to raise enough money to buy water rights. And, from the beginning, I looked at that program and I thought, it's not raising enough money to do that. It's kind of a business model that I understand why it was built the way that it was built, but it's not doing what it was intended to do. It's kind of like if I had a grocery store and I had to charge $10 for a gallon of milk in order to make it. It just doesn't fly. So I do think it's an issue. And it's something that I've put on the table many times this year in study sessions with the commissioners. I have not had any consensus with them on changes yet. But I'm definitely very interested in looking at other options as far as that goes. And I think the third part is the meter. So that part is where I think we're pretty stuck. I think we have to meter the amount of water coming out of the ground according to the state. The state has said the water belongs to them whether we like it or not. And so, in order to stop lawsuits and things, and in order to keep development happening, we do have to meter it. Now, who pays for the meter and what it costs and all those sort of things are also on the table.
Great.
That answers your question.
Yes. And do you see any less invasive options for this?
Well, less invasive meaning expensive or, I guess, is it the utility? I'm guessing the utility would be the invasive part. Yeah, and that's on the table. That's why I say, if there's another way to do it and not have that be part of it, let's figure it out. Yes. And we right now will have an opportunity for a different third commissioner and, the conversation may change. I have no idea what's going to happen. So, but I'll tell you, that's where I'm at. I've put it on the table many times this year.
Great. Oh, thank you so much for all your responses. If anybody has a question, please put it in the Q&A or in the chat box. And looks like we have a question. So Philippe Holbrook, one of our members of the Realtors, would like to know your response on COVID and background on that.
Okay. Boy, that's a long answer. So buckle in. So COVID, I guess the response for COVID. Okay. So there's several pieces to that. I think it's important that everyone understands the different players in this. So, and their authority. The state and the governor is very much in charge of this pandemic. The legislature granted a lot of authority to the governor and to the local health officer in this pandemic. And he's been using the State Department of Health to manage the crisis. And so you have to remember the authority of the commissioner in this, which is there isn't a role other than on the Board of Health. So I'll explain that part. So the Board of Health is 7 members. The health district is independent from county government, which is somewhat confusing because some counties have smaller, health boards or health districts because they're a tiny county or whatever. We're large enough. And it's the oldest district in the nation, or the Yakima Health District. So I sit on that board. There are 7 of us. So the 3 commissioners sit on the board. Kay Funk serves for the city of Yakima. Barbara Harrer serves for Hera, so a small city mayor. She's been there a mayor for 40 years. She's an amazing, amazing lady. And then Dr. Sean Cleary is a citizen member, and then Gail Weaver from Memorial Hospitals also. So if you look at that composition of that board and you try to figure out how you are going to make changes on that board, it takes 4 votes to make any changes on that board. And there's never been a consensus through the crisis to use the health board for any sort of action. And frankly, the decisions that have been made at the state. And I think it's important that, everyone understand the county is an arm of the state government. So the state makes decisions, the health district implements the state's decisions. We don't love it, it's not great. The health officer is a medical opinion. Yes, she's in Oregon. I don't like that either. In 2018, she was selected by the Board of Health at that time, which is before I was commissioner. There were no local applicants for that position. There was only one applicant, is my understanding. That was her. Health officers are a public health doctor, so it's different from an obstetrician or something. It's a public health doctor. So it's not like they're a common practice. Apparently, it's not something I've spent hours trying to study and figure out. I do know that it's hard to find them, and I've talked to other commissioners in other counties who have had a hard time as well. So, but anyway, she's been providing the medical opinion, and in normal times, that's pretty straightforward. It's if you have a hepatitis outbreak, her job is to say, well, you should do this or you should do that. But since the legislature granted powers, that changed everything. So, that has been her role through this is to give medical opinions. But really, the state is the one that's making the decisions on moving forward. When it comes to the risk assessment dashboard that was created at the state way back when, and it had all these criteria on it, how you move forward in phases and all that sort of stuff. They made that process to include commissioners as, approving phase changes, which was kind of just a fake process in my opinion. So you had to go through, the health officer had to approve, the State Department of Health had to approve, basically the final rubber stamp in the end was commissioners had to say it was okay. Well, of course we want to move forward, but we certainly weren't first in line initiating anything. We were just put on the list of people to make a decision in the end. So I think there was some confusion about that. The risk assessment dashboard in itself as well, the criteria were so challenging that they never really should have applied to Yakima County. And so, I've been making that case forcefully for months, since the beginning, really. And when the negotiations were happening for our first modified phase one, we had, I think it was like 731 cases per 100,000 or so. When we were talking about trying to open, the goal was 25. So we were not quite there. We were extremely far off of our goal. Things were not going well for me to be able to try to get anything open in Yakima County. But about 2 weeks after that meeting with Governor Inslee, we did open and have a modified phase one. We opened at 581 cases. We were starting down the downward trend. We opened up that modified phase one, which included, some capacity in, salons and restaurants and things like that were happening back then. And we didn't see a spike. I think there was a huge concern that, we can't do that. We had 581 cases. How are we going to do it safely? It went very well. We did it safely here. We did, I think, a good job managing that opening. And then we continued opening one more activity at a time all summer. And the governor in July paused the phase advancements. He just said, no more. And that, again, I'll make an opinion on that. And I certainly am not in his head at all. But I think it was because at the time that there was a pause, there were counties that would have had to move backwards. They were not doing as well. And so, he probably didn't want to have to move people backwards. That's just a guess. But we've been frozen in phases. And then all of a sudden, you've seen us move forward even through the freeze. We kept getting activities. We were negotiating all these activities and getting more and more all the time. And then moved to phase two, even though we were just told we were still frozen. And so, of course, I'm pushing for phase three right now, as soon as the 2 weeks are up, because the rules seem to be out the window. So we'll be taking full advantage of that.
Great, thank you so much. For our next question from Sherry Daniels, she wanted to know how you would handle the budget deficit.
Okay, so the budget, we do have a budget problem right now, you might imagine. COVID created some issues in the budget. And, as my experience has unfortunately been in business for a long time, I have a 1% profit margin business, a grocery business. So we've had times over our years where we had to make difficult decisions, and that is what's happened at the county as well. So, you have to do big moves when things like this happen. And unfortunately, we did have to make some big moves in our Department of Corrections and, lay off some folks and make some changes in the structure over there. And hopefully we don't have to do any more of that. But of course, that is what you do. It's a difficult thing to do, but you do have to do that when there are problems with the budget. Labor is your biggest controllable expense in any business. And it's the same thing with the county.
Great, thank you. And if there are any more questions from our viewers, just drop them into the Q&A or the chat box. And this is your time to have Commissioner Baker answer any of your questions that you may have. So please just drop a question in there.
I could tell everybody a little bit about my background if there's no questions.
Sure, go ahead. That would be great.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to let everybody know too that my experience in government affairs is long, so that people understand, I've worked in Olympia quite a bit. And so I understand a lot of what your government affairs committees do. I have been on those committees myself with the food business, the food industry. And I've been on the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businesses Leadership Council. And I serve on the Business Advisory Council for the Department of Revenue with Microsoft and Amazon. I do those things to stand up for our region and for small business. And I understand how it works in Olympia quite well. I think that's been very helpful for me through this process of COVID, through this year in the legislature, through, fighting off the upcoming session where we're certain to see some really challenging tax proposals. That's my strength in the past was, testifying if needed on issues like that. And I've been put on the tax policy work group for the Washington State Association of Counties with the other commissioners. They put me on a little group to talk about next session. And they're going to put a lot of things on the table that we won't like. And as business people and as people who live here. So, and just in my opinion, a lot of people don't like new taxes. So I will work on those issues as much as I possibly can.
Great. And we have a question. Do you think that a more forceful stand with the governor would have moved us forward more effectively?
Boy, I think I was pretty forceful, but you also have to remember who has the power in this situation. I'm a county commissioner and I don't have power over the governor. I do think that if in his circumstance as well, he certainly could punish us. So if we wanted to, you have to remember a few things. The funding comes from the state to the county as well. And I think that it's important to know that if you disrupt that in any way, the citizens and the services that they count on would be disrupted. I don't know what he would do. I can only predict what the governor would do, but I think working in partnership with the health officials and winning over their support for my proposals was really key in moving him forward and getting him to agree to the things that he did. Opening our county when we had a very high rate of COVID was a huge accomplishment. He had said you have to have 25 cases. So I'm not sure how productive pushing earlier would have been, because we really did get it pretty early. And I was fighting, like I said, from March 26th. And then soon after that, I was forming coalitions with the other counties, 12 counties, I think it was, or maybe more. We were meeting to try to get local control away from the governor. We requested that, I think, in early May. I tried just about everything. I talk to attorneys, I talk to lobbyists, I talk to just about everybody I can think of in order to try to get control of the situation. But, when the governor is in control, the legislature gave him that control. I just want to remind everybody. I hope the legislature takes that back, and I hope that if they don't, that the people do with an initiative or something, so that this can never happen again. I'm not the only commissioner in the state who has been frustrated by this pandemic and how it was managed. I've spoken just about every commissioner that I talk to, which is all the time, because I sit on that board with the Washington State Association of Counties. So there's 39 commissioners that I work with. Everyone's frustrated.
Great. And we had one viewer say, thank you for all that you do for our industry and all that you do for Yakima. And then we do have another question from Jerry. I know that the levy lid lift is going to be proposed again this coming year. This raises property tax for homeowners, especially after last year's increase. What are your thoughts on continuing raising property taxes?
Well, I know that I wouldn't do it as commissioner, so that's in the city of Yakima, is my understanding. So the council members are the ones who would decide if that happens, and I would strongly encourage you to communicate with them if you don't like that idea. I'm not a tax and spender. I never have been, never will be. I'm a fiscal conservative. We live within our means. So no, I wouldn't be for doing anything like that. Yeah, our taxes are pretty high, so. That's high enough for me.
Great. All right. If there are any more questions, please drop them into the Q&A. And if there's anything you would like to talk more about that would be pertinent to the real estate industry that we would like to know, that would be great.
Okay, so real estate, my understanding is it's doing quite well right now. But we just need more housing supply, I would think. Right. So that's what I'm really trying to do and work on for that group. And I think the builders have been busy, I hope. I mean, from the numbers that I've seen, I think I have a report here of the number of applications. We, I think, had close to a record number in July of applications. Some of that, of course, was pent-up demand, I'm sure, But I think we can continue to see a lot of growth. And I think right now we have a huge opportunity here if we decide to capitalize on it. Seattle's a total mess, and Yakima is a beautiful place. We could get businesses that are frustrated right now in Seattle and might be interested in relocating over here. We have plenty of buildings, and we have a wonderful place to live. And so I'm hoping to see some of that happen as well over the next few years, along with what happens with the flood control zone and the gap to gap and the east-west corridor. There's just so many exciting things coming up that will really make Yakima just boom.
Great. We have another question. Were you able to help businesses during the shutdown?
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't even think about that. So yes, we have been working on grants. So I worked with the commissioners, and they agreed that when we got CARES Act funding, which was brought to us through the federal government, and it was, that's a whole other conversation of whether that should be done differently. But the way that it came to us in the format it came to us actually was terrific for us to be able to help our local businesses. So that's the first place I wanted to go, and that's what we did. We created a grant program, and it was $2.8 million. We're going to end up spending more than that, I think, on our local businesses. But $2.8 million. And then I asked the governor to match it. He gave us $1 million more. So $3.8 million with our grants. That's gone out to all of the cities across the county. Well, I made sure that we reached every single city, and that we reached bilingually with our outreach and communication to make sure that all of the little cities in the county and all of the businesses that we rely on for our economy, but maybe aren't as sophisticated in their bookkeeping and all of that, we tried to make it extremely simple. So the application process was done on a cell phone, or it could be done on a cell phone. It was just, fill out a few questions about your business. And then you just could take a picture with your phone of receipts. And it was simple things like your rent or mortgage for your business, your utility expenses, that kind of thing. And then just submit it. And we had over 900 applicants. We're going to be, I think we're going to go through, and afterwards is the cities are also doing some of these programs now. We started ours, and then a lot of the cities are following up with that. I think Union Gap and Sunnyside are right now still doing applications for similar programs. But if they have too many people apply and they don't have enough funding in the city, I think the commissioners are considering being kind of a fallback position for that, and helping with that money as well to make sure that all those businesses are funded in all of those grants, because really going forward, the key is to keep those small businesses going. That's for the jobs of the people that work for them. And I feel a huge sense of responsibility to all the people who've worked for me for, my family for 38 years, me for 21 years. They count on me. And, I know that that's the way the small business owners out there feel as well. That they are, their people are looking to them to take, to continue their business going forward. And so, that was a really important goal for me, is to make sure that we kept them going. Next year's economic recovery will be challenging, but that'll be my full focus if I'm elected.
Great, thank you so much. We don't have any more questions, so we want to thank you so much for being here with us this morning, Commissioner Baker. And if anybody has any more questions, how can they get a hold of you? Oh, I'm sorry, there's one more question.
Oh, okay.
Landlords cannot collect rent from unemployed workers, are struggling to make payments. There are protections for renters. What about property owners?
Oh boy, do I agree with that. That has been so frustrating. The eviction moratorium, and the fact that, my grandparents were the mom and pop landlords. They were they're always in my mind, because I remember they relied on that for their retirement income. And I know that that's happening out there, and I've been very worried about it. And so we actually went to the state and I got a grant for this, and have some funding to give landlords 3 months rent. And, it's still not perfect. I just, I don't like the way that this was set up as far as the rules that you have to go through, because there's some income requirements and some things that the state kind of micromanaged and designed in that program, but it's still something. So if there are landlords out there who need help, I would encourage them to call our office is fine, 574-1500, or call the Human Services Department. They can help you get connected with the different parties that are handling the rental assistance program. It is a huge problem. And I think going all the way through this year, we're going to see a big spike in evictions, I think, as soon as it is lifted. And I'm concerned about that becoming the next wave of homelessness and all of that. So I'm trying to do it, preventative, and get ahead of it, and work with the Dispute Resolution Center and others in order to try to keep people in their apartments and homes if we can. But 3 months rent isn't going to cut it for a landlord. They really need to be made whole if possible. And so, of course, I'll work with legislators, and I think that local legislators here have an interest in helping on this as well. And Jeremy Defoe is very well versed in this, and I'm hoping to be able to partner and fix this problem. It's a big one, and it's a great question.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Again, we thank you for being here this morning. And again, how do we get a hold of you if we have any questions? Okay,
so there's a couple of things you have to remember. So if it's a commissioner question, you can contact me at the county, and that's Vicki, VICKI.Baker at co.yakima.wa.us, 574-1500. That's the commissioner's office. If it's a campaign question, if it's more about my political stance on something or anything like that, you can contact me at Vicki Baker with the number 4 commissioner@gmail.com.
Great. Well, Well, thank you so much. We're really happy to have you here this morning and spending your morning with us. And to all the viewers, this will be available on our social media and probably our webpage coming next week. So thank you again and good luck in your campaign.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.